DJ Dewey Rock on the track.
Welcome to eMerge Podcast 360. I'm your host, Maserati. We want to thank you for tuning in. No matter where you are in this metaverse world, we're going to continue to bring you the best quality content and formula that we know how. We want to thank you for all the likes, shares, and subscriptions on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. We will greatly appreciate you for stopping and joining in with us today. We have a very special show that's being brought to you by Brachelle Family Insurance Agency and Involve Social and Civic Club, where we understand the social and civic need of love, learn, live, and laugh. It's Pioneer Wednesday. We have a great show. We have a very special guest. She's one of our own. She's a pioneer in the medical field. She's one of the first in my generation that I know of, and we greatly love her. She's a graduate of Bastrop High School, class of 1987. She was born in June 27, 1969, to Jacqueline O'Connor and Alton Tony Chason Jr. She was graced and raised by her grandparents, Mr. Clemont Brown and Miss Molly and Peyton Brown, and she's a product and proud product of Henry V. Adams Elementary School, where she was part of the Gifted and Talented Program selection in 1975, where she went on through 7th and 8th grade as a part of the program. She was in orchestra, drama club, cheerleading, Greek mythology, pageantry, and the 4-H while in junior high school. She went on to Bastrop High, where she was in Mu Sigma, honors band, all district honors, cheerleader, class secretary. She was the senior class maid of the homecoming court, and she graduated third highest in her class. She's a graduate of Grambling State University class of 91, where she was an honor scholar in orchestra, cheerleader, and she was the president on the dean's list, all 87 through 91. And she's a proud member of Magna Cum Laude graduate, and she's a member of Delta Iota Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated, Fall 98. She's GSU ADMHA Mark Research Team in 89, Gamma Beta Club Honor Society in 91. And check this out, y'all. She was a contestant in the Miss Cover Girl pageant in 89, where she went on and she was ordained with her doctorate degree from the University of Rochester School of Medicine and Dentistry in the fall of 91 and the spring of 96. She's married to GSU alumni Che Navarro Manning Sr., class of 91, kids Che Navarro Manning Jr., Chandler Manning, and grandchild Aiden Elijah Longino. You can check out her credentials and her resume in her portfolio on Facebook. I give you none other than Dr. Cynthia L. Manning is in the building. How you doing today, Doc?
I'm doing well. How are you?
We're doing fine. We're so honored to have Dr. Brown Manning in the building, having a doctor visit with the doctor. How are you doing, and tell us how life been treating you?
I am doing well. I am honored and thrilled to be interviewed and to be able to talk on your podcast. I think it's wonderful what you're doing, and I'm excited.
Well, I told him, you can't go wrong interviewing Dr. Cynthia Brown Manning. You can't lose with that. Doc, kind of tell the people how it was for you growing up in the big old city of Scrop City.
Oh, my God. Growing up in Bastrop was a wonderful thing for me. My parents, Clement and Molly Ann, as you stated, they were actually my parents. I was adopted by them, brought to Bastrop August the 1st of 1969. And I had a great life, family, faith first, per my mom, and education after family, and then service to our community in any shape, form, or capacity that she deemed was necessary and or fit at that time.
Right, right. And Doc, you had a dream as a little girl. You told your mama one day that you was going to be a doctor, and you pursued that. Kind of inform us on what kept you focused through grade school and throughout high school.
Well, I think just the idea of medicine. I always thought that it would be an amazing thing to return to my hometown of Bastrop, Louisiana, and to care for those persons who took care of me when I was a child. And so through elementary school, I made excellent grades. I talked an enormous amount, so I stayed in trouble with my mom, who was my first grade teacher, and at HB Adams with Miss Lovey, who was my second grade teacher, and even Miss Etta Moore. But I always was very interested in the biological sciences and the human body, and I was always trying to help and or guide others. Even as a young child, always trying to figure out what made the body do what it did. And so even in high school, I'm reminded many times by my classmates that when we were graduating seniors, I signed our yearbook as Dr. Cynthia Brown. And I didn't even remember that until I graduated from medical school, and we had, several different class reunions with respect to that. But just in general, always knowing that there was something bigger and better than what I was doing or than what I saw, but knowing that education is a foundation for everything. And my mother was a master educator. She had a master's and a plus 30. And I always made sure that I understood that education came first.
Exactly. And you did exactly that. Now kind of tell us, how was it? You were very popular in school, being a cheerleader, honor societies, all the way through elementary, through high school. How did you kind of balance all of that heading to college?
Well, my mom's philosophy was if I did cheerleading through junior high and high school, then I had to play the piano because that was the first instrument that I learned to play. And I could not do any of the extracurricular activities until I completed all of my coursework, all of my homework. So many times I tried to make sure that all of my work was done at school. So I didn't bring any books home unless I had to. I had a very good memory, and so I could remember anything that you said to me and anything that you presented or put on a board. So rote memory was huge. I was an audiovisual learner, so I didn't forget anything growing up. So it was really easy, to be honest. It wasn't a struggle at all. Elementary school, middle school, high school, even college. The journey became, or the learning lessons became, when I went to medical school. So for me, being a participant in extracurricular activities or desiring to participate in extracurricular activities always ensured that I was going to put my classwork and coursework first, because my mom was not going to allow anything extra if that did not occur.
Right. And just looking at your resume and the things you have accomplished, you have to have a strong foundation and that support, which you're explaining to us now. And once you got to college and you start pursuing that dream, what was the continuous motivation that, and we know if anybody ever tried to get a doctorate or master anything, it's a different level of the game when you get that degree. What was the continuous push to, I'm almost there, to keep you going? And some people turn around, but you kept going. What was inside of you that kept you going?
The desire to make my parents proud and to be able to give back to them financially many of the things that they had given to me, and the opportunity to care for our community in any shape, form, or fashion. My goal was always to be able to care for people and to ensure that they came first. To be a servant has always been at the basis of everything that I've ever done. I have a servant's heart. God gave me that, and that's how I've always functioned, to be a servant to all. And so always remembering that I had to work hard all the time, and that education was going to be my key for my finances and for fulfillment in the future. So whatever delayed gratification that came along the way was just a part of the plan.
Right. You know, you being a doctor, you know, we know that's a difficult field. But Doc, kind of share with us, what's your philosophy with medicine and treating your patients?
My philosophy has always been to treat people and their family members the way you want to be treated and the way that you want your family members to be treated. I can always and have always rested easy at night because I always put people first, their families first, my patients first. And I figure that as long as I can sleep well, then that's a job well done. I've always listened to my inner voice and made sure that whatever's in my heart and in my mind, those things are always conveyed to the patient. And I've always felt like it's God's discernment that has not ever allowed me to go wrong with any decision making and diagnosis during my career.
Right. So with that being said, now, you know, sometimes we have patients that have other physicians and things. So how do you go about collaborating with other physicians and nurses with a patient?
So in my field, I'm usually the person that allows and or makes the collaborative plan because I'm the family practice clinician. So I'm usually the primary care physician on all of my cases, and I refer the patients to whomever I think they need to be referred to based on the diagnosis or the need for therapy at that time. And so referrals through conversation, sometimes through email, sometimes through face-to-face conversations in the hospital, in the hallway. But I was usually the person that did the collaborative agreements with, you know, all the things that happened within the office. If they needed lab, if they needed x-rays or anything of that nature, I referred them out through my staff at my office. And when I was a teaching clinician, it was the same way through my residents when I was teaching other physicians to be physicians in the community.
Right. So Doc, you know, we're going to take an intermission and we're going to come back and we're going to get into more speaking to the African American community about some of the health concerns that you know they should be aware of and taking notice to. When we return, we'll be with Dr. Cynthia L. Brown Manning, MD, after this intermission. Welcome back. We're still here with Dr. Cynthia L. Brown Manning. This portion of the show has been brought to you by Northeast Louisiana Counseling of Bastrop, Louisiana. Dr. Manning, let's kind of speak to the African American community about some of the health concerns that you know that we should be aware of and taking notice to, especially being African Americans.
Currently, the biggest issue in our community, and it's always been an issue, but we don't do a lot of discussion about it, is mental health. I think for years we talk about people being different or people being quiet, but during the pandemic and being isolated, we have found that mental illness is a significant issue in all of our communities, but significantly in our community with depression and suicide, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, ADHD, ADD. I think diabetes and hypertension as well are huge issues in our community. And in our really small town, there's an enormous amount of cancer, colon cancer, breast cancer, pancreatic cancer, from the young as well as to the old. I'm not really sure, but I've always felt very, very firm in my belief that it has to do with the things that we eat, our increase in agriculture, even though it's been a blessing to our town and our city that we had a paper mill and that we have farming. I think that some of those things contribute to the increase in disease processes that we've seen throughout the years. So at this particular moment, mental health is really major in our healthcare society. And then in our community, again, hypertension, diabetes, morbid obesity, or weight issues, as well as cancer, are the things that are of huge concern in our community.
Right. And well, Doc, we as the African American community, especially males, we're afraid. We just admit we're afraid to go to the doctor. We think things will just go away. How do you build a rapport with a patient that that's really not trusting the process?
I think that you always have to be listening to their concerns. I think you have to know, like you said, what their issues are. What are you afraid of? What are your fears? With respect to that, fears come from the unknown and from feeling like men and women don't listen to us. Many times we haven't been heard or we haven't been seen, and so we still have those concerns in our community. I would like to think that being prominent in the community or being appearing in the community, speaking at churches or speaking at events or venues will allow people to see that we're just normal people, and always being ourselves, open and honest and willing to have a conversation just to say hello gives people the comfort and willingness to come and see you as a clinician, knowing that what we're doing is not going to harm them, but we're trying to help. And we want to always be open to listening to what's going on and give people autonomy over their own health. Because when people feel comfortable with what they're saying to you and that you're listening, even if they Googled it, if they looked it up, if they use an old encyclopedia or whatever, they just want to know that they're being heard. And so I think that if we make people comfortable with us as clinicians, with our education and with our ability to conversate, then I think people are more amenable to coming in and seeing physicians for their needs.
Right, Doc. You spoke about the mental health part of it, which is very prevalent right now in society. I mean, it's hitting home when it start hitting these small towns. That's the eye opener. But with the mental health part of it, what do? You have a patient who complains of symptoms, but you find out is no cause. We kind of know now that a lot of it is dealing with the mental. How do you deal with that part of it, Doc?
So I always want to know what the root cause of the issue is. Is it childhood trauma? Is it fear? Is it diet? Is it lack of something? So I think that if we can find out what happened to an individual prior to coming into our offices, then we're better able to address their needs and or their concerns. Oftentimes when we talk about mental health or medical problems outside of mental health, if we can't find a diagnosis like high blood pressure, diabetes, or cancer, or anything of that nature, then when people complain of being tired or of having fatigue or being sleepy or having lack of energy, then we always need to make sure that once the labs are cleared, once the x-ray studies have been done, that we then do address their mental health, because many times that's all that we'll complain of is I'm tired, I'm sleepy, I'm fatigued, I don't have any energy. And those are signs of depression on a daily basis. Lack of energy worthlessness, fatigue, irritability, lack of sleep. So even the things that we talk about that can be related to like sleep apnea or being obese or having heart disease are also the exact same signs and symptoms that people have when they have depression or anxiety or attention deficit or obsessive compulsive disorder. So we have to ensure that all the primary medical things that we've always been taught are not present, and make sure that we don't ever forget about the mental side of medicine, because that's a huge problem in our community these days.
Well, Doc, nowadays people are we are trying to live healthier, but then sometimes we find out some of the medicines, they end up doing more harm than help initially. What are some natural holistic ways that you deal with it through some of your LLCs and business ventures? Give us some healthy organic ways, Doc.
So a lot of times exercise is the very first thing that I ask people to do, even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes per day. If you did 5 or 10 minutes a day, that's about 25 to 50 minutes per week, which increases the endorphins in the brain and increase our dopamine. And so that helps with our depression and our sadness. The other thing is we ask that people try to decrease their carbohydrates or their fats or their sugars, because that tends to increase our anxiety. And when we talk about aches and pains and changes in our skin as we age and mature, as I'm now 53, then collagen is the most helpful product that we have. You can drinking collagen and or using it in that fashion through a pill as well is healthy for us. Modere collagen product is the one that I support at this time, and it helps with joint aches and pains as well. It can help lower your blood sugar levels. It can help with weight loss, and so it addresses both your high blood pressure, your weight issues, as well as your dermatological issues with respect to your skin. I think that water is one of the things that many of us avoid, and is the most healthy thing that we can consume. We need to have most days half of our body weight in water each and every day in any shape, form, or fashion. And so I don't always think that you go to a pill. I think that you find out what people are comfortable with, meet people where they are, and so that you can understand what their needs and their concerns are and address it accordingly. Because you're absolutely correct that medicines have significant side effects and occasionally do more harm than good. And if we can not start them, or if we can wean people off, then that's what we should do as well. I believe that turmeric and curcumin help with inflammation and pain also. So there are a lot of different medicinal or naturopathic medicines and methods to manage illness. Meditation, yoga, as well. Those things help in the field of medicine, where medicines sometimes don't help, or where medicines have caused a problem and people are more fearful of taking a pill.
Exactly, and what I'm about to ask you next, Doc. I'm a mental health specialist myself, and finding out more about the African American disparity with it. What are some of the health disparities that we don't know? You named a few, but that's for like a general for everybody. But for particularly African Americans, what are some of those disparities and warning signs we need to be specifically aware of?
I think that now it's access to healthcare. I think in the past, we many people, because jobs were more prominent in our community, so everybody had regular insurance, Blue Cross Blue Shield, United, Aetna. Now, because of sometimes income-based or sometimes life situations, we now have more Medicaid-based society. And so we need to know that there are agencies out there that allow care based on your Medicaid and not just your insurance. I think that the disparity is we're not always in the smaller communities or smaller towns for access. Sometimes you have to drive more of a long distance to reach a clinician. Sometimes access to healthy diet is not always in our community because the grocery stores are no longer in our small areas. So sometimes it's more expensive to get to the grocery store. Eating healthy and being healthy, fruits and vegetables and seafood or grilled items are more expensive. So that becomes an issue as well. I think that we have to recognize that the biggest issue, I think, becomes education about where we should be going and what we actually should be doing in our community.
Right. Doc, when we come back, we're going to get more into this mental side of it and how do you ensure effective communication across different departments, especially now dealing with, HIPAA laws and various things. You treat somebody, then they don't want you to tell their doctor, and then the doctor, sometimes we as people, y'all, because we don't want people in our business, but your doctors need to know what's going on, mind, body, and soul. When we come back, we'll be talking about the mental side of the disparities with Black African Americans after this intermission. Welcome back. We're still here with Dr. Cynthia L. Brown Manning, MD, and we're talking about the disparities with the African American community when it comes to communication. When it all falls apart, Doc, how do you make sure you get effective communication and continue to gain the trust of your patients?
I think always listening. I always try to make sure that I look every patient in his or her face, make excellent eye contact. I will shake their hand. I think respect goes a very long way. I say Mr. and Mrs. even to some of my young adults and some of my children. I call them by their last name and not by their first name because it's just a general level of respect that I was taught and how I grew up. I think that letting them know that whatever they say to me is confidential between the two of us unless it needs to be shared with another medical professional. I think that protecting their identity and protecting their rights as children as well as young adults, that becomes a huge issue. Knowing when it is that you need to speak to the parent and when it is that you can just speak to the child, because that's important as well. I think that the only time not only time, but an important time when we as medical professionals and healthcare providers or mental health providers have to break that cycle is if someone is homicidal or if someone is suicidal, then we are held to a higher standard, and that has to be reported because they need to be evaluated immediately, and that becomes a crisis situation. And so that is when we would diverge or divulge information to specific persons to assist that person to save a life or to save someone else's life.
Right. And Doc, being in the mental health field, that's one of those situations you have a crisis and you have to do what you have to do. You have a good patient, a good client. They're always there. They come see the appointments. They're available for you to come to their home or however it may be, Zoom with Meta Health. But when you have to do what you have to do and they become aggressive, how do you deal with that?
it has always been my motto, that when we're in session or in group or at my office or if it's a doctor day, that this is an anarchy and I'm the queen. And so therefore we have to agree to disagree sometimes, but to always be able to, that they hear me and I hear them. And in addition, you have to know when the aggression is a threat and when it's just fear. Anger comes from fear, failure, or frustration. And so when we can identify those 3 F's in our patients or in our friends or in our family members, then we can better assess that situation and usually bring calm into any situation with respect to that. And, the other side of that is if we're in mental health, and even when I was in primary care medicine all the time as well, if I needed to call security or the police department or anybody, the sheriff's department, I was not fearful of doing that either. 911 is our friend when it comes to that. And you have to know when it is that you need to walk away from a situation as well. That didn't happen very often, but on occasion we have had people who've had to be escorted, off the premises or out of the hospital or something of that nature. But, using your God-given discernment as well to know when, you may be in over your head or the person may be out of control with respect to that.
Well, with that being said, you lead me into the next question I was going to ask now. Do you remember or has there ever been a time when you had a discrepancy with another physician about a patient where you figure, especially from a mental health standpoint, you're seeing medicine may not be the route to take, and the doctor and primary doctors are saying yes. How would you deal with that situation when you know that medicine may make the situation worse?
So in that situation, normally, if someone is not as familiar with the mental health capacity or mental health field or mental health medications as you are, they will usually defer to you with respect to that. They won't try to do anything that's antagonistic or negative for the patient. But if you are worried about the patient, then we do a physician's emergency confinement, which is called a PEC, and we make sure that we can secure the patient away from whatever the nidus of agitation or aggravation is, and we protect the patient for about 72 hours and then make an evaluation during that time as to whether or not it is medication related, substance abuse related, or lack of medication related, or whatever is needed. But Cynt as a physician and we can always agree to disagree with respect to that. We try to handle it in a professional manner, in a room away from wherever we are talking about the patient.
Right. With that being said, it's been very difficult. I know for mental health standpoint, with COVID and all the things that are going on.
Mm-hmm.
How are you? What are some of the challenges that doctors are facing today?
Oh, so when COVID was more aggressive than it is now, being face-to-face was an issue, but you still had the ability to call for assistance because the sheriff's department still have to go if you feel like someone is a threat to themselves or if you feel like they're a threat to another individual. You can still do a physician's emergency call and you can still have someone go evaluate the patient. And so we had to learn how to use our computers more with telemedicine. We had to learn how to use FaceTime more. We had to learn how to do video chat more, group chat. Even when I was working at the VA, we did telemedicine and we had video visits as well to assist with the COVID climate, as well as to assist with patients who have difficulty with driving, or patients who don't have transportation, which is also a healthcare disparity. Those are ways to help with that. in my career, because I trained locally at LSU Monroe, which is now Ochsner Health Center, we were taught to do home visits and to go out and see our patients. So even in the COVID climate, sometimes we still had to go as long as you had the appropriate medical equipment, masks, gloves, gowns if needed. You could still go out. And for me, I still do make home visits. That's been a part of my career since I was a resident in 1996, and still in 2022, I still make home visits if needed.
Well, Doc, I want to know, to give the people some ease about the vaccinations with COVID.
Sure.
Now, older, my generation, if you think 45 or older, now they're talking about the shingles, and now
right.
this HPV vaccination that they're willing to give the kids at school.
Right.
Kind of share the people about your knowledge about the effectiveness of the vaccinations.
So I think the most important vaccination besides the COVID vaccine that we just spoke about is human papillomavirus, which is HPV. It's been out for many years, actually. My children were vaccinated. They're both 22 and 24 now, and they received the HPV vaccine because it protects women from cervical cancer, and it protects men from penile cancer, because in women, we have pap smears that we get to ensure that our cervix are healthy and to see what's going on. But in men, they don't always start to have urological exams from someone who specializes in the male body until they're in their 40s, if there's a family history of prostate cancer or if they're having some urinary problems. And so we might miss a penile wart or something of that nature, and warts are or can be a cause of penile cancer and or cervical cancer, and the human papillomavirus vaccine is what we use to prevent that from happening and to help decrease the amount of cervical cancer that's in heavily rooted in our community as well.
And that's what I wanted to get your expertise on, Doc, with this HPV. It seems like as soon as we adapt to one thing, here comes another. I'm sitting here looking at, okay, I had chicken pox, I had Indian fire, I had every kind of scab you could have as a child. I had it, only for them to come back and say that I'm still eligible to get the shingles.
So you're eligible, or you're at increased risk for developing shingles because you did have the chicken pox. I did not have the chicken pox. And so when I went to medical school, I had to be tested to see if I had the varicella titer. So they checked my blood to see if I had ever been exposed or had it. I had not. So I had to get the chickenpox vaccine in medical school, and that made me at increased risk for being sick when we were on the ward. Now at 53, I did have my varicella vaccine when my shingles vaccine at the age of 50, because shingles is a very painful rash that we get when we either have the chickenpox or been exposed to it. And it comes from, again, stress, anxiety, depression, sadness, an illness or something of that nature. And because it is a painful rash, it comes in what we call a dermatome of the skin. So anywhere where you can touch someone, you can get this rash, and it's because it lies, and it's not dormant, so it lies quiet and still in the body until something triggers it. And because it is so painful, and because there are visual effects, so your eyes can be affected, and that's kind of the bigger ordeal with respect to that, and it causes this tremendous pain, and people can get a staph or strep infection from the actual rash that they get from shingles. So it became an issue with respect to protecting us from being sick or from developing this painful rash. And so the shingles vaccine, the HPV vaccine, they've all been out there or available, but because we didn't meet those age criteria at the time, Now, when I was growing up, HPV was not available in a vaccine, but all the other vaccines, the measles, the mumps, tetanus, um, polio vaccine, I received all of those vaccines as well. But because people were very frightened about a myth or a lie that was told about what vaccines do to children, because it could not ever be proven that this specific physician created a barrier to health care with respect to that, many parents stopped getting their children immunized. And so some of the illnesses that we didn't see, we are now seeing again because people stopped using immunizations or vaccines or stopped allowing their children to be vaccinated. So it's come back up as a huge discussion with COVID specifically, as well as just measles and mumps. Now children are getting measles again, and it has stopped. We even had some smallpox, a couple of smallpox cases, but it's because people change how they feel about things. People don't want to be quote unquote told what to do anymore. And I think it happens as people lose trust in the medical community. And so they don't trust us because we haven't always been honest or forthright. So I think that if you give people the ability to know the truth and tell the truth, then they feel more comfortable with what you're telling them with respect to vaccines. And COVID, I mean, I've had all 4 COVID vaccines. I'm alive and doing well. My joints are good. Not to say that they don't have any side effects, but I believe in medicine, holistic and osteopathic. And so I think that it all has a place.
Right, and that's definitely what needs to be known, because I'll be honest, it took things like shingles to hit my dad and my auntie. It took things like my dad to have prostate issues for me to go to the doctor. And it took little things for me to start noticing, hey, man, that lump doesn't look right. When this started growing on me, and you find out, and I just found out that it's over 300 variants of this HPV people, and those little simple little moles and little skin tags and things you have, go get them checked out. Doc, before we let you go, you drop jewels and gems on us, and I could keep you here all night just doing this doctor visit. You're so informative. That's why we love you. When you put it all aside and you focus on and look back on what you have done, what are some of your greatest accomplishments thus far?
I think being a parent to my children and teaching them about service, about community, about advocating for themselves and for others, I think that's been my biggest accomplishment. Both of them want to serve in some shape, form, or fashion others. Both of them have servant hearts. And when I meet their friends in the community, they tell me how my children have either educated them or guided them or directed them towards things that are powerful or learning experiences or prevented things from happening. And so I think parenting my children and mentoring others in the community. There are young women that have gone to medical school because they worked with me in my office, gone to my same medical school. I think that's been my greatest accomplishment, is just being a servant to our community and to my family.
And that you have done. We're just looking at the reviews. Like I told you earlier, I say now, they know they don't love Dr. Manning that much. Phone just hot, can't work, jumping off, bleep, bleep, love it, my sissy, my friend. What do you want to tell the beautiful family of Scrap City from the heart, from Dr. Cynthia L. Brown Manning?
I am just grateful to have been given the ability to serve in any and every capacity that they have allowed me. I've been honored to care for them, friends, family, those who, even people who have not always enjoyed my company. I've just been blessed to be a blessing, and I'm grateful to God for the gift that He gave me. I've always said that medicine is my ministry, sometimes a blessing, sometimes a curse, but it's been my biggest blessing for the most part. And I'm just grateful for the things that God has allowed me to do and for the life that He ordained me to live.
Right. And Doc, and you live a beautiful life. You're a beautiful woman. You are the epitome of Delta Sigma Theta. You hear me? And I don't care what nobody say. You the example. And you the example. I don't care what nobody say. You one of the greatest examples. And we got a lot of great examples of Deltas around here, y'all. Y'all young ladies, y'all need to start watching these Deltas. No disrespect to the rest of y'all, but I just love me a Delta. Before we let you go, Doc, we always ask our guests from looking through a glass, what does the community of Morehouse Parish need to do to turn the morale around?
I think listen. Open your ears, listen, support our educators. Know that education is the key to all the things that we need, and to know that everybody needs to have guidance and direction as well as discipline. And that without those things, then the world is very chaotic and we lose ourselves. And so we always have to be dedicated to discipline and to maintain our focus on faith and to have belief in something other than ourselves.
Yes, ma'am. And I'm going to keep that image in my mind of that picture, that 3-year-old girl that made that dream come true. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Dr. Manning is an example of you can do it from Bastrop. No one can tell you what you can do. If you got hope and faith, you can make things possible and make them reality. Dr. Manning, we love you, and we appreciate you coming on, and we wish you the best on all your endeavors. Is it anything that we can do for you here at Emerge 360?
Just keep doing what you're doing. I think that it is a phenomenal thing to find pioneers in our community and to allow the young people and the new generation, the younger generation, to see, like you said, that there's nothing that's too difficult and there's nothing that's impossible. We always just have to believe, have faith first, put God first, and anything that we can see, think, and or dream, we can achieve.
Well, we wish you the best, and we hope we can get you back real soon. I'm your host, Maserati. That's been Dr. Cynthia L. Brown Manning, MD of Delta Sigma Theta. We want y'all to know this has been brought to you by Involved Social and Civic Club, where we understand the social and civic needs of love, learn, live, and laugh. Until next time, y'all get involved. Y'all stay encouraged. And most of all, y'all get immersed. We out of this thing.
Head to the sky. I know you thought it was gone, but I made it through the fire. Turned your back on me, homie, and it was such a surprise. But the struggle out here, everybody just trying to get by. Mama told me a long time ago, keep my grass cut low, so I can see these snakes when they approaching my door. In this game, I seen a lot of soldiers sell their soul for the bag, and I seen a lot of close friends fall out behind ass. That's why I keep my circle tight, family over everything. Family over everything. Told at a young age, don't be scared and never just hang. Man, this law of attraction got me moving how I move. And along the way, it's some you win, some you lose. Yeah, life is lesson. Truth handed to an innocent child. These streets that got real crazy. These youngsters buck wild. Not to mention, cops killing brothers for fun. Revolutionary prepare from the dough. The chosen ones.